is this. They are very angry, very heavily armed, very heavily armored bayonets. This is because the musketeers will not be issued anything even resembling a bayonet until the year 1680, when a Frenchman comes up with it. So, their equipment includes their breast and back, this is their armored protection, and a helmet. Notice the breastplates have what's called tassets. This is to protect their legs. They're also all armed with swords and very well trained in the use of them. And of course their namesake, the pike. Now, in order to be able to maneuver effectively around the battlefield, a pikeman is taught several postures. The first of which is order his pike. Take the butt of the pike, place it on the ground, place his hand upon his hip, and generally stand around as though he were God's gift to women. This is about as close to attention as we get in the period. Have a care. So, in order to maneuver, he will go to what's called advance his pike. Taking it up there, he'll form a pocket with his arm, carrying the pike nearly vertical. This allows him to maneuver in a very dense formation without having to worry about hitting his fellows. Now, if he were on the march, as you saw us enter, they do what's called shoulder their pike. Carrying the pike down at its balance point makes it much more comfortable, and when I expect them to march 20 miles in a day, I need them to be as comfortable as they can, particularly wearing all that armor. Now, there's two ways for pikemen to engage in combat. The first is charge pike. This is primarily used against infantry. What they'll do is take the pike down, sight down the shaft, and from here they can deliver a very strong thrust, which in drill is practiced with the command to lay on! Lay on! Now, the advantages of the pikemen in combat is the denseness of their formation, which we can demonstrate for you by kind of taking a slice of what a pike formation would be. Pikemen, face your bodies by the left hand. In a deeper formation, the first ranks are the ones who are going to engage. The rear two ranks go up in port, and they're basically on standby. If the sergeant of the pike block needs the ranks to switch out to give the front ranks a rest, or as casualties mount, it's also necessary. Now, as an attacker, I need to be able to get into this porcupine here. So if I can get past the first man's pike here, all he can pretty much do is hit me about the head and shoulders pretty uselessly. And it's the second man's job to get me. Now, however, if I can get past him and kill the first man, it becomes the third man's job to get me. Rise, Lazarus. Now, as I said, there are two ways that pikemen engage the enemy. The second way is their basically primary mode. So, pikemen, face your bodies by the right hand and order your pikes. And this is against cavalry. They are the only way the musketeers are going to be able to defend themselves from cavalry. Essentially, these gentlemen will put themselves in harm's way by taking a posture called prepare for horse. They will brace the pike with their foot, draw their sword, and draw the pike down. Now, I don't mean to upset anyone in the audience who happens to be a lover of animals, but the points of these weapons are not aimed at the rider. They are in fact aimed at the chest of the horse. This is because two events will happen when this formation receives a charge. The first is the horse will slam into this formation, and these gentlemen will experience what it's like to be hit by a car. And don't worry, I'll just knock out the dents in the armor and train a few more that look just like them. The other event, and the more likely one, considering the horse is generally smarter than its rider, the horse will pull up short. Now, in our time period, most riders, most cavalrymen are, very well armored from head to toe. So now they have momentum working against them. They will probably get thrown over those reins right into this lovely porcupine. Now, if they somehow survive that, there are always pesky musketeers lurking in the rear ranks who are more than happy to finish them off. So, pikemen, recover. Thank you very much, pikemen. You may return to the formation. So I'll now bring up our musketeers. Musketeers, prepare to march. March on. Prepare to stand. Stand. Double your files by the left hand. Now, the musketeers here are armed with matchlock muskets, named so for the piece of burning rope in each of their hands. This cotton or hemp rope, cotton in this case, has been soaked in nitrates, and when ignited burns very hot and very slowly. The coal on that match will get to a point of about 400 degrees. This is a very reliable weapon as you're essentially putting fire into gunpowder. Something will happen. Now, this weapon was introduced to us in about 1450 when lock, stock, and barrel join up as one to form the all too familiar shape that you see before you. It is a very easy weapon to use. There's only 21 steps. This taught to them through the pages of a picture book. Why a picture book, you might ask? Well, literacy in the 16th, 17th, and even later on is a little hit or miss. Therefore, they look at the pictures in order to tell them how they're supposed to stand and what they're supposed to do. Now, the first step is they will handle their piece. They will then open their pan, which is on the side of the gun there. They will then handle their prime and prime their piece, pouring a small amount of very fine gunpowder in that pan, that dish on the side of the gun. They will then close their pan. Because we're about to put the very hot coal of that match very near gunpowder, we need to make sure there isn't any where we don't want it. So they will cast off loose corns and blow off loose corns. They will then cast about their piece. This gives them access to the muzzle. They will then handle their charge. Now you may notice 3 of my musketeers went for the wooden bottles across their chest. This is their bandolier of charges. Each one of those wooden bottles has enough gunpowder for 1 shot from the musket. Now, the musketeer in the front there with the red sash, she's a bit more specialized. She's what is now being introduced as a dragoon. A dragoon is issued a horse. Now, she won't fight from horseback, but she will ride from one place to another very quickly, dismount, and fight on as a musketeer. Now, as you can imagine, if she were wearing a bandolier on horseback, things could get a bit uncomfortable. And since we don't want any black-eyed Susans, she uses a paper cartridge in place of the bandolier. This is actually introduced around the year 1550. So they will then charge their piece, pouring down that gunpowder down the barrel. Now, if they were loading a shot, which they are not today, they would simply fish one out of the pouch at their side, or more often, spit one into their hand they've been carrying around in their mouths. This may sound ridiculous considering it's a lead ball, but considering the dangers of lead poisoning are not very well known in the 16th and 17th century, it's much more convenient to carry them around in your mouth rather than have to fish it out of that pouch, especially when you're getting shot at. So they will then draw forth their scouring sticks, not called a ramrod yet, and ram home their charge. This seats everything good and tight down at the bottom. They will then recover their scouring stick and replace it, which is the most important step of this entire drill. I cannot stress that enough. Don't get me wrong. You can fire the scouring stick. It makes an excellent projectile. However, it's a rather awkward weapon. The awkward part being having to go across the battlefield and ask for it back. And we don't want any shish kebabs, so we make sure we replace it. So they will then recover their piece. Take forth their match and blow it well, it says in the Manual of Arms. This is to get any ash off the end of that match and make sure the coal is good and hot. They will then cock and try their match, placing in the jaws of the serpentine and working the action to ensure it's going to hit the proper place in the pan. Now it is this point that they are ready to fire, so I will tell them to present your piece and give fire! So, good musketeers are expected to be able to fire at the rate of 3 rounds in a minute. Now, obviously, they can't do that while I'm saying open your pan, close your pan, and all of that. That's where my job gets very easy. All I need to say is, musketeers, make ready your piece. And they will do so as quickly as they can. Because at this point they have that drill in their minds, but they are doing this more for survival, because this is what would be considered combat conditions. So they will do so as quickly as they can. And actually we've got a pretty good time going on here. So as I said, this weapon was introduced 1450. It'll actually continue to be in use until the year 1688, when the British finally decommissioned the last matchlock from the arsenal. The French actually continued to use this weapon until 1703. And the reason for this is very simply made and very simple to use. So we are ready to fire here. So present your piece. Give. Fire. Now, you'll notice through all of that drill, the butt of the weapon never touches the ground. This is very important because musketeers are expected to be able to fire whilst on the move. And the reason for that is they are advancing shoulder to shoulder with the pikemen. So they need to be able to keep up a rate of fire while still supporting them until the pikemen get in contact with the enemy. And what we do in order to accomplish this is do what's called fire by advance. So if you imagine for a moment a few more ranks of musketeers here. The rear rank will be called to the front, and they will fire a volley, as you've just seen. They'll immediately begin to reload. The new rear rank will come forward and do the same. And the effect you have is you're leapfrogging towards the enemy. I'll show you how this works in just a moment. I think we're set. Musketeers. By the left hand, double your file, double your ranks. Rear rank, advance to the fore. Present your piece. Give. Fire. Rear rank, advance to the fore. Present your piece. Give. Fire. And that's how that works. Now, the last thing we're going to show you today is how these two formations work in concert. So musketeers, please return to the formation and make ready. So as you can imagine, what we're going to demonstrate for you is how this formation would respond to being attacked by cavalry. This is the best way to showcase how this group works in concert. Now if you can imagine suddenly being faced with a thundering formation of horses coming at you, this is not something that would be done very regimented, very orderly. It is pretty much get ready as soon as you can before we all get run over. Give the musketeers just a few more moments to get ready here. So what we're going to demonstrate for you, as I said, is the charge for horse. Basically what you're going to see the pikemen rush forward and form a human wall. This is what the musketeers will use as their shield, as their protection. So we're going to they will demonstrate fire by advance only to a fixed point. So they will come up to those pikemen, discharge their weapons, return and make ready again, and the next rank will come up and do the same. Company, prepare for horse. First rank, advance to the line. Present your piece and give fire. Retire and make ready. Second rank, advance to the line. Present your piece. Give fire. Retire and make ready. Pikemen, you may recover. Musketeers, face your bodies by the left hand. By the left hand, march, prepare to march, march on. Prepare to stand, stand. Pikemen, by the left hand, double your ranks. By the left hand, face. Company, salute. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That does conclude our demonstration. Once the musketeers have been checked out and the weapons are safe, we invite you to come forward and ask any questions. If you wish to get out of the very hot sun, and I don't blame you, you can always visit our encampment just on the other side of those trees there. So thank you very much.